Oftentimes when we are looking at documentation and trying to work on these new projects, there's a lot of words that are in the documentation that may be confusing, and it makes it frustrating to read the documentation if you don't understand what they're talking about. So I wanted to introduce you to two terminologies, two words, or two technologies that are used in our project and the documentation that we've been using that hopefully will clear up some of the confusion. And they're definitely tools that are being utilized. We just aren't physically doing it ourselves. So one word is Babel, and one word is Eslint. And so I wanted to show you what those were so you would have a better understanding of what's being referred to or what's happening in our projects when we build them for deployment. The first one is Babel, and Babel is what they call a transpiler. Let's see if I can see that word in here. And that is a fancy word for compiler, but they use compiler here. The transpiler is also used. And what Babel is, and I will show you, you can see an example of it going on here. In super easy terms, Babel is taking JavaScript, our vanilla JavaScript that our browser understands, but there's a lot of JavaScript that we have access to now, newer versions of JavaScript that the browser does not understand, or the newer browsers may have implemented the JavaScript, but maybe some of the older browsers that people still have out there haven't implemented the newer JavaScript tools. And so Babel is a tool which converts our newer JavaScript into JavaScript that all of the browsers understand. Let me just kind of show you what I'm talking about. You can watch this little animation, but there's this cool little tool called Try It Out, and I'm going to go into this tool to try and give you a better visual of what I'm talking about. And so what you can do is, I'm going to just copy and paste some code I've already written. So in this panel, I've written some code. I've written this fat arrow notation. We've used that in some of our examples. And this is a relatively newer version of JavaScript. And so what Babel will do is it'll compile or transform, however you want to think of it, into older vanilla JavaScript that all browsers would understand. And so we can therefore use the newer technology, and then before we actually deploy our project, we implement Babel, which will take all of our code and convert it into more vanilla JavaScript code. Here's another example. Relatively new is this string interpolation, that backtick that we've been using. In other words, here is a backtick, and so rather than having to concatenate with the plus sign, we can remember use those backticks, $sign with the variable names, and so that is string interpolation. It's trying to interpret what's our variables and putting them together so we could also, continue on with our statement and not have to worry about the plus sign to concatenate. And then Babel is turning that into vanilla JavaScript that all browsers can understand and compiling it into a different version for us. And we'll see that in another video very shortly on how that then gets deployed. So that's what Babel is. Eslint is a tool that's often used in our projects as well. And if we look at the demo, Eslint is just a tool which helps us write our code. It gives us clues. It's a syntax checker. So it is just an implementation that is for development purposes only, and it will look through our code and try to give us some clues of, well, you're not doing something right, or syntactically you're wrong, or you might, like in this example, it's saying foo is assigned but a value is never used. And so what that's saying is that we have this sentence, but we didn't actually do something with foo. So if I did like console log foo, that, oh, it doesn't know what console is. Okay, so the point is, then it doesn't know what console is. But anyway, the point is that this original error is trying to let you know that you've initialized a variable, you've given it a value, but you haven't actually used that variable anywhere in your code. So that's that error. And then bar is not defined. That's simply saying, well, you're trying to put bar into foo, but you haven't given bar a value. So if we had done something like bar equals 5, well, now that makes sense. So that error is going to go away. So Eslint is simply a tool that is giving us clues on making our, either helping us fix our syntax error or making our code better. For example, we had a variable that we weren't utilizing, so making our code better. So that is Babel and Eslint, and those are things that I've seen in our documentation quite a bit, and I thought I would give them some meaning to you, so it wasn't just words that make it more frustrating to read the documentation.